Okay, so we're going to take up this quiz. And remember, whenever you feel the need, pause, rewind, and I encourage you to pause and try some of the calculations yourself. So how many solutions will this equation have? Well, all we need to do is figure out the discriminant, right? And the discriminant is b squared, so negative 5 squared minus 4ac. So remember, that's just the part inside the square root of the quadratic formula. Well, that's 25 minus 36. 25 minus 36 is a negative number, and since it's a negative number, we get no solutions. Okay? Number 2 says the solution or solutions to this equation is or are. So here we have to isolate. So to isolate, I need to add 15 to both sides. Right? So that gives me 18 is equal to 2x minus 2 squared. Then I divide by 2 on both sides, and I get 9 is x minus 2 squared. And then I square root both sides, and that gives me my plus or minus 3 is equal to x minus 2. Well, that means that either, so that means plus or minus 3 plus 2 is x, which means x could be 3 plus 2, which is 5, or x could be negative 3 plus 2, which is negative 1. So 5 and negative 1. There it is. So which of the following cannot be used to solve? Factoring can be used to solve. Isolating, I just did it up here. This is the quadratic formula. We use that all the time. So this one gives you the axis of symmetry, not a solution. Okay? All right. So the next problem says, a ball is thrown and it follows this path where h is the height and t is the time. When will the ball hit the ground? Well, when it hits the ground, we know that the height is 0. So that means the equation that we have is negative 4.9t squared plus 14.7t plus 5. So we plug it into the quadratic formula, and we get negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Okay, so if we simplify this and take the square root, we end up with t is equal to negative 14.7 plus or minus 17.72 over negative 9.8. So that gives us our two options. Option number 1 is that t is negative 14.7 plus 17.72 over negative 9.8. Well, that gives us negative 0.31. That's a negative answer, so it's no good. Option number 2 is that it's negative 14.7 minus 17.72 over negative 9.8, and that gives us that t is 3.31. Okay, it's important to write a therefore statement. So we can say therefore the ball lands after 3.31 seconds. Okay? All right. So what's the maximum height of the ball? Well, this equation's in standard form. All right? So I'm going to use the fact that the axis of symmetry is t is negative b over 2a. Right? So in this case, that is negative 14.7 over 2 times negative 4.9. So that gives us that t is 1.5. So we right now know that it reaches the height. So I can already start my therefore statement. So it reaches a max height of, I don't know what, I'll fill that in, but it happens after 1.5 seconds. Okay? So now to figure out that maximum height, all I have to do is take my time and plug it into the original equation. So h is negative 4.9 t squared plus 14.7 t plus 5. And we should get 16.03 meters. So we can plug that in. Okay? So that's that problem. Now, knowing all that information, we can sketch a little graph. Okay, so let's just use that as the time axis, and we'll use this as the height axis. Okay, and in time, our numbers for time are pretty small. They go up to 3.3, right? So that means I could even say that this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4, right? And for height, the max height is 16.03, so I need to go up to 16. So if I do 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, that'll do it. But if I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, that's not enough. So I'll do 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. And now I have my one x-intercept at 3.31, so that's right about there. I have another one at negative 0.31, that's right about there. And I have my max at 1.5, 16.03, so that's right there. So with those 3 points, I can sketch a pretty good graph. All right? So there's my graph. Now the question is, how long does the ball stay above 6 meters? Solve using a formula and show it on the graph. So on the graph, here's a height of 6. So here and here, this is the length of time. Okay? All right. So now let's do it using the formula. So the height is going to be 6. And I can say 6 is equal to negative 4.9 t squared plus 14.7 t plus 5. I need to subtract 6 from both sides because the only way I can use the quadratic formula is if I get rid of that and I make it 0. So negative 4.9 t squared plus 14.7 t minus 1. I can use my quadratic formula and I get the answers. T is equal to 0.07 or t is equal to 2.93. So what that means is that this is 0.07, this is 2.93. If I wanted to figure out how long that was, it means that it went above here and then below here. So everything in between is how long it was up there. So therefore, it was above 6 meters for 2.93 minus 0.07, which is 2.86 seconds. Okay? So that's the length of time. These two are the times when it's at the height of 6. Above 6 is for that length of time. Okay? All right. Next question says a right angle triangle. So before we keep going, I'm going to draw a right angle triangle. Has a hypotenuse 2x plus 1. And the two other sides are x and x plus 4. Determine the value of x, find the length of each side, and find the perimeter. All right, so first let's set up the equation. So I know since I have all three sides, I have to use a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. So if this is a, then a squared has to be squared. A lot of people didn't square it. If this is b, then b squared has to be squared. If this is c, then that's c squared. Now we have to expand and simplify. This is not x squared plus 16. Not x squared plus 16. I had to say that a lot of times and people still did that. This means x squared plus x plus 4. X plus 4 is 2x plus 1, 2x plus 1. So now when we expand and simplify, we get our x squared plus x squared, 4x and 4x, that's 8x and 16x, or sorry, 16. This is 4x squared, 2x and 2x, that's 4x, and that's 1. Now we need to collect like terms. Well, this is 2x squared plus 18x plus 16 is 4x squared plus 4x plus 1. And now I need to move everything to one side, so I get 0 on one side. So if I subtract minus 4x squared, then I'll have 2x squared minus 4x squared. If I subtract minus 4x to get rid of this, I get 8x minus 4x. And then I subtract 1, I get plus 16 minus 1. So I get negative 2x squared plus 4x plus 15 is 0. Now I have a standard form equation is equal to 0, so why not use the quadratic formula? Okay, I'm going to leave that part out. I'll leave you to check, but the x answers that you get are, you get negative 4 plus 11.66 over negative 4. If you try this out, it's a negative number. And the other, and negative numbers don't make sense because we're talking about lengths. And the other part is, x is negative 4 minus 1166 over negative 4, which ends up being positive 3.91. So that means that the sides are x plus 4, and 2x plus 1, which is 8.82. And that means the perimeter, which was the final question, is 20.64. So I would just add all three together. All right? So it's 20.64. And we can just call them units because there's no units assigned. Okay, so that's that one. Next question says, a rectangle has a length which is 6 more than twice the width. So rectangle, it has a length, it has a width, and then it has a length which is 6 more than twice the width. This too, most people forgot. So I know that the area is length times width. Well, the area is 230, the length is 2w plus 6, and the width is w. So now if I expand and simplify, I get 230 is 2w squared plus 6w. Now I know that I want to move everything to one side, so I get 0, so I subtract 230 from both sides. Right? And now again, I use the quadratic formula. Okay? So you can try that out again. The positive x value that you get should be 9.33. So that means, or sorry, not x value, it'll be a w value in this case. So the width is 9.33, and the length, remember, is 2 widths plus 6. So 2 times 9.33 plus 6. So that makes the length 24.66. And since this is meters squared, that means that the width is 933 meters, and the length is 24.66 meters. Okay? So that's that one. The last one. The sum of two integers is 61. Determine those two integers. Well, sorry, two consecutive integers and the sum of their squares. So two consecutive integers can be represented as x and x plus 1. I want the sum, so plus, and I want their squares. So this will be x squared and x plus 1 squared. So the sum of the squares of two consecutive integers is 61. Now again, this is going to look like standard form, but we have to try to expand and simplify. So we get x squared plus, this expanded and simplified, remember, is x plus 1, x plus 1. So that gives me x squared, x and another x, so 2x, and 1 times 1 is 1. So I collect like terms. I get 2x squared plus 2x plus 1. I subtract 61 from both sides, so minus 61. So I end up with 2x squared plus 2x minus 60. Now, these numbers are pretty small, so I can try to factor it. I could plug it into the quadratic formula, no problem. But I could also try to factor it. I could common factor a 2. And now it's simple trinomial. I need two numbers that multiply to 30, negative 30, and add to positive 1, right? Because there's a positive 1 there. So that ends up being 6 and negative 5. So that means this will be 2, x plus 6, x minus 5 is 0. Well, this tells me that x is negative 6, and this tells me that x is positive 5, right? Because either this is 0, which means x is negative 6, or this is 0, which means x is positive 5. Okay, now remember, x was one integer, right? The other was x plus 1, right? So negative 6 is 1, and then negative 6 plus 1 is the other. So negative 6 and negative 5 is a possible option. And the other one is 5 is 1, and then 5 plus 1, which means 6, is the other option. So the two consecutive integers are either negative 6, negative 5, or 5 and 6. These are consecutive and these are consecutive. If you wrote the answers negative 6 and 5, those two integers, some of their squares do add up to 61, but they're not consecutive. So really, this is one answer, this is the other answer, and both of them are okay. All right, so that's that. That's the quiz. Make sure that you watch this again if you need to understand anything, and ask me questions in the beginning of the week.